What would you say if you were running Ethereum right now? What would you do differently? What can you learn from a network like that? Compliments and criticisms. Obviously, the biggest complaint I get from my students in my DeFi Academy is the gas fees. They all complain about the gas fees. I tell them these are their tuition fees for now. Put the trade on because that way you'll understand yield farming. You'll understand liquidity pools. You'll understand options trading. So you'll understand your wallets. So just do it. And I'm promising them that in the future, there'll be a layer 2 solution or a layer 1 solution that will make it cheaper and faster thanks to the people at AVAX. I'm actually not promising them ETH 2.0 anytime soon because even Stane said when he was here, sometimes in the next decade is what he said to me. So just your thoughts on Ethereum for where it is now and where it needs to go in the future.
Yeah, so I think for Ethereum, I would say that I was very skeptical of the ETH2 designs from day one. Like, I think this entire idea of sharding, like we can get into the details of it, but it's just problematic, right? And in many ways, like back then, my kind of like unsolicited feedback to the Ethereum community was to focus on L2s. Like layer 2s are a much more practical, much more elegant solution than creating like Ethereum is complex as a base layer. And you're basically trying to solve your problems by adding a ton of more complexity to the base layer. And sharding is going to, end up having these issues where one shard is actually where all the interesting applications are. And then everyone wants to be in that shard. And it has like all sorts of like really complicated type of processes going on in there. So I'm still skeptical there. I think that design has changed so many times that I honestly can no longer keep track of it. They made some progress like over the years. Clearly, even Ethereum people at this point admit that it has taken way too long, and it has actually left that room for opportunity for systems like Solana, Avalanche, and others to come in and fill that gap. And I do think that when they look back, like I would say even 9 to 12 months ago, a lot of the consensus in the crypto industry was that Ethereum has won because it has the most amount of developers and use cases, and they have a moat around it. And it was a question mark that would other L1s be able to take some of that traffic and interest away, right? I was in the camp of like, no, it's going to be a multi-chain world, right? But it's hard to kind of like stick with your convictions for years without seeing real world data, right? Like logically it made sense, like we've taken that bet, but it was only last year, I think, when we started seeing real traction come to the other L1s, like the rise of Solana, the rise of Avalanche. Like I think there are stats like there's so many users of MetaMask, like maybe even more than 50%, that are not even using Ethereum. They're actually using the Binance Smart Chain or something else, right? So it's a little bit like clearly we saw some of the blue chip Ethereum projects that launched on Avalanche, right? So we're seeing that migration and how easy that migration is. So I think after last year, it's pretty clear that the moat that Ethereum has is actually pretty weak, and it's very easy to migrate away from Ethereum, right? And at the same time, I think ETH2 designs remain complicated. So if I was in Ethereum, and they're also taking a pretty big bet of shifting to proof of stake, right? Where I stand today is that I think proof of stake can work for smart contract systems, but I wouldn't trust a proof of stake system as sound money, right? Because it's self-referential. You're trying to define the properties of the system by using money that is defined within the system, right? And I think you need a proof of work based sound money layer. But for smart contracts, maybe that's fine, right? Because they are a different beast. So Ethereum is trying to still be both sound money and a smart contract system while moving to proof of stake. And I would pick a lane, right? I would basically be like, you might want to be a really, really good smart contract system. Or if you really want to give Bitcoin a hard time on being sound money, then you need to question the kind of decisions that are being made and in terms of the complexity being introduced or changes being made and the entire shift to proof of stake, right? So with that said, I do think that Ethereum is still by far the biggest leader. It has an enthusiastic community, a brand name, like a lot of kind of like young people who are discovering crypto, I think they will end up writing a Solidity program first. And I do think that there, I don't think Ethereum is going away, right? It's a question of like, how much of the market share do they lose out to the other ones? And I think they can try to make better decisions to defend a lot more of their market cap as this grows. And also, like, don't repeat the mistakes that the Bitcoin Maximus did, right? There is already a ETH Maximus community that is kind of like you can see it play the story play itself over, right? Like, they're creating their thought bubbles. They're kind of like saying these new things they're only looking at the bad things happening with the new systems instead of like really looking at all the innovation that's happening with the new L1s. And I think you kind of like don't want to become a maxi, right? An ETH maxi in this case, where you're turning a blind eye to what's actually happening out in the market.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I was talking to Justin Sun of Tron live here a couple weeks ago, and Justin's, pretty interesting guy in himself. Definitely knows how to do some great marketing. And he suggested that Ethereum stick to their proof of work mechanism, which is clearly functional, and they don't ever even attempt to go to proof of stake because it's an unknown on a massive, massive smart contract network that's potential downside. And he just said, just leave it alone, keep doing what it does quite uniquely, and leave proof of stake to the Trons and the Algorands and the Ivoxes of the world. Do you agree with Justin?
I didn't know that Justin said that, but I independently said that on Bankless, which is an Ethereum podcast. I basically said if I was designing this, what I would do is try to start making the Ethereum base layer simpler, even like disable certain types of applications that can run at the base layer. Like maybe you only want to do Arbitrum style fraud proofs at the base layer. Remain a proof of work network. You're already the world's second largest proof of work network, right? Yeah. And with the proof of work network, you have a shot at being sound money, right? Especially with the new economic policy that you have been successfully able to roll out. Just send all of the smart contract traffic to the L2s and make that the default experience, right? Like there's no point in my mind in trying to run smart contracts both on the base layer and on L2s. That's basically causing more confusion. If a user is onboarded to an L2 first, right, that's a better UX for that user. They know that these are cheap gas fees, and Ethereum main base layer is basically used for fraud proofs or basically for settling any of the stuff that happened on L2s. And it is not trying to make life more complicated by introducing untested new consensus algorithms on a $500 billion network.